I think that we'll watch the Ashes of Creation video. The reason why I want to have a short video is that if you guys look at the clock right here, this says 8:22 a.m. Guess who hasn't slept? Yeah, look at that. Ashes of Creation is absolutely smashing expectations in 2022. Okay, let's take a look at this.
Ladies and gents, the time is once again upon us where I feel the need to make another Ashes of Creation update video, because the last 3 months of Ashes live streams have each shown considerable progress. Unfortunately for me, this means that certain parts of that big overview update video I made for Ashes 3 months ago is already out of date.
Yeah.
No worries though, just means more potential
One of
content.
the unfortunate things about making videos in general is, like, if you make a video and then, like, you know, something changes, like the video's wrong. This is, like, very true with, like, video games and, like, you know, like how to play a certain class in a certain spec or something like that.
In the future. So today we're going to discuss the updates from the live streams in August, September and October, covering topics such as the updated world's map and world size, the basic hybrid combat system for the Ranger archetype, the newly showcased gathering system which completely blew me away, and some spiciness in the Ashes of Creation community. If you want to support my Ashes of Creation coverage, then click my referral link, which everyone has access to, in the description below.
I had to get one of those.
Additionally, if you're a talented developer, Ashes of Creation are currently hiring people for the following job roles on screen. And from November 4th to November 5th, the Ashes team are doing their yearly 24-hour Pathfinder livestream set in the world of Vera to raise money for San Diego Children's Hospital.
Oh, it's really
nice. So first,
nice.
let's discuss the most recent Ashes livestream. As for me personally, this was the one that surprised me the most. The update to the game's gathering system.
We watched
so in
this
the past
recently.
when I've covered this game during its Alpha 1 test back in 2021, something that felt pretty bad to me was the gathering system. You'd see tons of trees, rocks and plants in the world,
you could only mine some of them.
mine, chop or gather the things that had a gold sparkle around them.
Yeah.
This at a time when New World had just released the best MMO gathering system we'd ever seen, with every resource you can see being gatherable. The Ashes system felt kinda lackluster in comparison.
Exactly.
This wasn't something that I personally expected to change, as the game was already super ambitious. It was kind of unreasonable to think that they'd also add the new...
I thought it would, because, like, gathering is something that casuals do. And if you make the game fun for casuals, the game will live. If a game's not fun for casuals, it's a dead game.
World-style gathering system on top of everything else they were doing. Well, turns out that isn't the case.
I love the new UI.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, and I remember we watched this and people loved it.
It's happening. Oh my gosh! Within an area, is that correct?
Yeah, definitely.
Talk to me.
Whenever I see this break apart, because this is how rocks do break apart. If you watch a stone cutter, this is how it would be to an extent. Based off of what it is. Maybe not with this rock, but in general, they do fissure like in like a very clean line. So this actually was not inaccurate. It just reminds me of whenever I watched that other video for that other MMO, and then all it did is, like, after you mined the mine, it just went like this. Whoop. It just went back into the earth.
A little bit about surveying.
A nice wide.
Yeah, that's not how it works.
To scan as much of the area as possible.
The Mad Lads at Intrepid actually did it. Every tree, rock or plant you see in the world is now gatherable. Not only that, but they also added physics and collision to
I don't think every tree, rock and plant is, but it's like 90% of them are.
Too. Notice how the tree falls, then bounces off the giant rock.
Yeah.
Look at the way the branches actually have weight to them when it falls, and the way dust kicks up from the ground as it lands. The game's not even in Alpha 2 yet, and visually, the gathering looks more satisfying than any other MMO, perhaps with the exception of New World.
Yeah, it looks really
Mining
nice.
rocks in Ashes of Creation also seems more interesting than the standard MMO, as most of the time you won't know what mineral is inside until you've split the rock
the rocks are loot boxes.
open and can see the contents. Here, for example, you can see that the rock contains iron ore.
Yeah.
But before you've mined it, you wouldn't know.
That's
With
smart.
some randomness to this system, it would kind of prevent the problem that New World had for a while of bots just camping orichalcum veins in the world 24/7. Harvesting also
Yep.
looks really nice, and Steven mentioned that some of the plants will be seasonal, some only growing in the winter and others only available in the summer. During this live stream for demonstration purposes, they had the respawn rates turned up extremely high. Resources won't respawn this fast in the live game, but it's cool that they've animated the process of trees slowly regrowing. It kinda reminded me of seeing trees in Arcade slowly grow and only be gatherable once fully matured.
Yeah, and,
Other
Lost Ark has that too. I think that's good in both games.
aspects of gathering that were mentioned include things like a surveying skill to help identify resources in an area.
Yeah, this is badass.
Multiplayer gathering is something that's being looked into, so similar to Lost Ark, if two players go to chop a tree, then they'll saw it down together. And apparently
Exactly.
land management is also going to be a factor. If too many people constantly ravage a certain area for its resources, then those resources might respawn slower.
I'm very curious to see how that actually works in practice. I'm skeptical, but also hopeful at the same time.
Overall, I was extremely impressed by this early look at the new gathering system for the game, and I expect it to improve even more as development goes on with further polish, improved animations, and balancing. They've literally taken the best part of New World and put it in their game, as
Very
if the
true.
hype levels couldn't go any higher. Moving on to the September livestream, we saw a preview of the updated hybrid combat system for the Ranger class archetype, and holy shit.
Yeah, they brought out some really banger updates. I'm kind of concerned that Ashes of Creation will have like a month where they don't have some sort of crazy groundbreaking update, and then people will think the game is dead. But I mean, that's just like I think if we see an update that's like kind of like the wood on the houses is better or something like that, I am very concerned that people will like oh wow, game's dead. That's not true at all in my opinion, right? It's just sometimes progress, with games is like it's the same with anything, right? It's like if you're writing an essay or trying to figure out anything, it's not just a steady line.
Look at the audio-visual feedback on display here.
Take that guy down.
So in the intervening time, they've gotten stronger. They've kind of found some techniques, some help.
More powerful. You can hold this, and when you see that little flash there at the end, that indicates that it's fully charged.
That's a
You can-
strong ability.
Airstrike does a lot of things. It moves the character and the AoE, and also the targets. So it's definitely up there.
Yeah, that ability is so rad.
I love that you can see the limbs of the bow flexing for the powerful attacks. You can hear the tension in the strings, the whistling
Yeah.
of the arrow as it flies through the air, as well as impactful hit effects. My favourite ability displayed was Airstrike. Leaping through the air, excellent mobility, raining down arrows in the process. This has got to be up there as one of the coolest ranger abilities I've ever seen in an MMORPG. Something you've probably noticed about
Yeah, I like that a lot too. I mean, I think for me, like if I'm playing a ranger class, what I really care about is like the ballistics of the arrows. I think that's what makes the class interesting or not. A bit anime though. It's definitely like an ultimate type ability,
Ranger Combat Showcase is that it leaned a bit more to the tab targeting style rather than the action combat style that was shown off with the Greatsword in the past. Apparently, some people were upset with this and was expecting full action combat, which has never been the goal of Ashes at any point.
That's stupid. I think that you should have tab targeting as well. Like you should have soft tab targeting with action combat abilities. Like I don't like the idea that you have to actually manually aim every single attack. I think auto attacks should 100% be tab target. The exception, I would say, is a bow in PvP. And I'm talking about PvP primarily PvE, where tab targeting is okay. I think that whenever you introduce, like projectile type attacks, and then you also apply a tab targeting system to them, that's an issue.
The goal has always been hybrid combat system where you press a hotkey to switch between the two modes of tab and action.
Yeah.
When you do use the bow in action mode, you can use your
it's
abilities and
aimbot,
attack
effectively.
even
Yeah.
if you don't have a target selected, just like in Guild Wars 2. I think some people have concerns about balancing between tab and action, but at this point I think it's the kind of thing that needs to be tested and balanced before we debate it too much.
Yeah, I think that's true too. Everybody always has very strong opinions on this game that no one has played.
Personally, I'd expect certain classes to work better in action mode, such as warriors with their cleaving attacks, and other classes to work better in tab targeting, such as rangers that are primarily known for single target focused DPS. That being said, the combat design goal is also that you can create different builds that are more action or tab depending on your preference.
Yeah, exactly.
As we've only seen basic ranger attack plus 3 abilities, I don't think you should throw your toys out the pram just yet, as I'm sure there'll be more action combat centric ranger builds possible in the future as more abilities are added. As a whole though, I've been super impressed with the past 2 combat showcases. The game's come a long way since Alpha 1, and I personally can't wait to see what they do with mage combat. I've said multiple times in the past that I expect Ashe's combat to be similar to Guild Wars 2 but better, more impactful, more grounded, with better audio-visual feedback. So far, it seems like my prediction for this is on target to come true.
I haven't played Guild Wars, I'm not
the development
sure.
live stream from August, and this was the one that made my most recent Ashes vid outdated 2 weeks after it released. Thanks for that, Stephen. So previously, the world size was 480 kilometers squared, and the world would contain 103 regular nodes. This is a picture of the old world map. After some internal testing though, the team realised that it needed to be rebalanced, as with 103 nodes on a 480 square kilometre map, there wasn't enough space between the nodes. This is the new Ashe.
Yeah, I'm really glad they did that, because like, if you have the nodes everywhere, the game stops feeling like a world, and it starts feeling like a lot of the new WoW zones, where it's like, every single square foot is like utilized for some sort of a purpose. It doesn't feel like it's an actual world. It feels like it's a game environment.
Of creation map. This one is 1,200 kilometers squared, and instead of 103 regular nodes, it's been reduced down to 85. So the world size has essentially increased by 2.5x.
I also want to keep in mind, this is 85 on release. They might add more later on, but they could have just trimmed the scope of the project on release to make sure that they hit some sort of internal timer. So it's important to keep that in mind too. It's like, oh, they might just add in 10 more nodes or 15 more nodes 6 months after release, but they're just probably not going to be ready by then. Too large isn't good, dude. Well, how do we know it's too large? We haven't played it. Like, I don't know if it's too large or not. We'll have to see.
Some would say this is feature creep, but the fact that they've actually reduced the number of nodes, I would have to disagree, and I see it more as rebalancing. Just to give some context to the scale of this world, Stephen said it would take roughly 75 minutes to travel from the top of a continent to the bottom on foot, and 50 minutes to travel from the top to the bottom on a mount. That's one giant-ass world. I think it takes roughly 1 hour to run on foot from the...
I'm concerned about the world being too big and people spending too much time in transit. I think that, like with an MMO, this is a big problem that New World had on release and they fixed, is that you would spend more time going from point A to point B than doing what you were at point A and point B to do. That is not a good thing. Obviously, this was kind of the case with like Legion World Quests back in Legion, but the reason why it was like that is because people had such good gear they could one-shot all the mobs. So it felt like this was like an earned thing rather than an actual fact of game design.
Top of Eastern Kingdoms to the bottom in WoW, so maybe it's a similar size or slightly larger, and that doesn't take into consideration the massive, fully explorable ocean with islands. I just hope that 10,000 concurrent players per server is enough to make such a large world feel populated. It was during this live stream that Stephen also
I will reiterate my stance that servers are a technological limitation, And if it was up to me, every single person from every single place would be all playing on the same server if latency and technology allowed it. Even people of other languages, from other countries, from other time zones, everybody would be on the same server.
Mentioned that the open
There would be
seas
no
will
server,
be
there
open
would just be the
PvP
game.
zones. A controversial decision, but one of the game's
Stick with that,
major
that'd be
design
awesome.
pillars is risk versus reward. There will be alternate methods of travel you could take to avoid PvP, such as flight paths between coastal nodes and airships,
Yeah,
but these
sure.
methods will not allow the transit of gatherables. The way I see it is that the open seas in Ashes of Creation is kinda similar to RuneScape's Wilderness. It will probably be a place where you can make some of the best money in the game, however you're going to need to be on guard at all times. Even if you disagree with this decision and aren't interested in actually partaking in the PvP, it's undeniable that there's a certain level of thrill associated with the possibility of being hunted down by other players.
For some
In
people,
RuneScape,
yeah.
for example, the Wilderness contains some of the best money-making PvE mobs in the game for players to farm. Does the fact that these players are sometimes hunted deter them? Not really. Instead, PvE players develop methods to run away, make things harder for PKers, and give themselves the best chance of escape with their loot intact.
Yeah, I think
I'd
it
expect
depends
to
on
be
the
possible
systems.
to do something similar in Ashes. Create specific builds or craft certain ships that allow PvE players to have a better chance of success in the game of cat and mouse on the seas of Vera. Finally, to wrap up this video, we've had a bit of drama in the Ashes of Creation community recently, following a video by Lucky Ghost bringing up concerns about the potentially polarizing nature of the PvP flagging system in
Yep.
Ashes of Creation. My take on this is that the video was pretty good and brought up some valid concerns that are clearly shared by a lot of people. However, I don't see the point in speculating too much about things that may or may not be design issues until we've had the chance to play and test the game.
Yeah, we
If
need
the
to
system
see
is
it.
dog shit and the vast majority
That's the thing is like the only thing that I'm worried about is that people that really want to have a PvP, like a forced PvP game, will like try to make the game fit into that, even if it's not working out well on the beta. And that's what I think would be really problematic.
if people complain about it, then I think Intrepid will change things, but I don't see the point in doing so until we know the specifics of how players will inevitably abuse the system.
Yeah, exactly.
This video's also brought up the debate on if the game should have separate PvP and PvE servers. And personally, I think that's a bad idea because Steven has spent years designing this game with the intention that PvP is a major component that makes accomplishments have meaning. It's so deeply integrated into the game that having a New World style toggle or separate servers is going to fuck up a lot of systems. What's the point of the entire caravan system with localized storage without the risk of PvP when you're transferring your goods?
Well,
It's
that's the whole point, is that I don't think people want a risk when transporting goods. They just want to move the goods from point A to point B. Like, that, yeah, that's... There are people that don't feel that way. And it's the same thing, like, this is kind of my perspective on it, and I've said this before, is that, like, for example, with Rust, there are Rust servers that function as, like, effectively PvE servers. Now, this is not the way normal people play Rust, but this is the way some people want to play Rust. I think that creating a server to service a part of the community that's not being serviced by PvP servers is not a bad idea. I don't think so at all. Too risky for the game? I think it'd be too risky for the game not to have it, if you want me to be honest. Because, like, a lot of people, like, as soon as they hear, like, they have to be PvP on, they're just not going to play the game. That's all there is to it. And so, yeah, it's divisive. I think that I find that the people that are trying to push for non-consensual mandatory PvP, I find them to be infinitely more annoying than the people that just want to play the game and not get fucked with. They are so annoying and obnoxious.
just going to feel like a system designed to waste your time.
We turned New World and PvE and it died. So you think New World died because it was a PvE game, and if it was PvP only, that it would still be alive? And they wouldn't have needed to make the changes that they did? You think that was the problem with the game, is that there was PvP? That's not how it works. Yeah, that's just it. It's so dumb. I believe so, sadly, yeah. So you think that would be a good thing whenever they had all of the bugs with, like, the hatchet immunity and the invincibility bug? You think that would have been better? It's just, again, it's just so dumb.
About the game's bounty hunter system, just delete it. Change the feeling of the open seas from being risk versus reward content where you're sailing around looting treasure whilst avoiding pirates, to being a pirateless ocean that you just numlock from one side to the other. In asking for separate PvP and PvE servers, you're basically asking the developers to balance two different versions of the game due to how PvP is so deeply integrated into every system.
And it's really like it's a measurement of, like, a value proposition. Because, for example, if adding in a PvE server would take maybe 10% more effort onto the team, but it would result into, like, let's say 50% more players, which would be 50% more revenue that they could continue developing the game, I would consider this a big positive. I would consider it a huge fucking positive. So it's like you have to look at this from, like, a logical business perspective. Is that these things can exist simultaneously, and they can both make each other better. The PvE servers can make each other better, make the game better, because they bring in PvE players at a probably higher rate than maintaining and making changes for those PvE servers would take. And then the PvP servers would make the game better, because that's the reason why the game is even there in the first place. So yeah, cater to all equals cater to none. So then you agree with me that one server that's supposed to cater to all people will cater to none of them.
Sure, PvP and PvE servers can work in theme park MMOs like WoW, because PvP isn't so deeply tied into the systems and reward structure of the game. Imagine you're on a PvP server and a world boss spawns during a certain time window. After 2 hours, the boss will despawn. Maybe the boss isn't mechanically hard, but takes an hour to take down. The challenge is fending off other guilds also trying to contest the boss for a long period of time. Such an encounter would feel like a King of the Hill style engagement, and would probably reward great loot. This same boss on a PvE server would be boring as hell, because it's a sack of health in which the challenge was killing it whilst fending off other players. This boss would be killed on cooldown every day on a PvE server, whereas on a PvP server there might be some days where no single guild can take it down. I just feel like
that's, I mean, I don't know. I feel like the last instance of, like, that being a possibility was like WoW, like classic WoW. And usually, like, the amount of toxicity and, like, weird shit that happened in, like, world PvP with, like, the world bosses, like, I felt like that was... It's like one of those things that's like, it's good in some ways and it's also really bad in other ways. Toxicity is good? I don't really think so. I think that the toxicity in the games make them a lot worse, and it limits the growth that the games can have. BDO is a good example. I don't know how BDO works that well. Do you think Albion system? I haven't played that enough. I played WoW, and I think that that's kind of what he's saying, right? Is like world bosses that spawn. Everybody knows they're going to spawn, or they randomly... It's like everybody knows that there's a window that they can spawn in, which is how the classic WoW bosses spawned. I feel like that created a lot of problems, and it was like super fucking toxic. And if you want to have that in the game, that's fine, but you have to understand that if you create a system that gives people these opportunities to fuck with each other in like a massive way, you will negatively affect the social aspect of the game, because you will drive people out that are just average, good-intentioned players, and you will reward people that are malicious. This is just what will happen. This is the same thing, for example, like in Twitch chats, for example. Like, there are a lot of things that, like, whenever you have, like, a really negative pull-up, bro, I don't need to poll it because we have plenty of data that shows that's the case. Like, there are many cases of this being true. Like, what would a poll do? Like, we don't need a poll if we have evidence. Because this is what happens, is that people try to vote as if they do or they don't like something. And I don't look at how people vote, I look at how people act. And if you look at the PvP servers in Classic WoW, every PvP server except for 1 or 2, and it used to be 2, and now let's be honest, it's only really 1, has trended more and more towards one extreme of a faction more than ever. Because everybody who says that this is something that they want somehow turns out to be wrong. And I'm not going to listen to somebody voting and saying, oh no, this is what I want, whenever I've already got evidence of what happens. This is what people want. This is what happens. Stop using WoW as an example, please. There are many other games. So why is WoW a bad example? Yeah, I'm a little bit confused. Why would WoW be a bad example? Yeah, let's see here. It's not designed for it. It isn't a PvP game like Ashes. Ashes is not a PvP game. I don't know where morons got this idea that Ashes of Creation was a PvP game. They've never said that. They said it's PvX. That's literally what they said. That means PvX does not mean PvP. If it meant PvP, they would have said PvP. It's like, Shine, stop using the thing you know most about. Please use something else instead. Yeah, I know a lot about it, and I've seen how these other games... And also, like, you can look at which... Ashes is influenced a lot by Arcade, which has had a lot of this PvP systems. I mean, I can't really know why Arcade isn't successful or not. But I think that it is very telling that every single game that has mandatory PvP is either dead or dying. I think this is a very, very compelling argument that it is not good for the game. This is an extremely fucking compelling argument to me, and I'm sick of people trying to talk around this, like, oh, this time it'll be different. No, it probably fucking won't if you don't have either an extremely good system to deal with it that nobody has ever thought of before, and again, Ashes Creation is effectively everybody saying, listen, let's see it, Steven. Let's see what you've got to offer. Maybe we'll have a good solution, and it'll be great. I'm hoping that that's what happens. But to just act like that's going to happen for sure when it's never happened before, we'll see what happens. I'm not going to write a blank check on this. Everyone hating PvP makes me sad. Well, I don't think they hate PvP. They just play PvP games for PvP. How many of you guys like PvP and you play Valorant or Overwatch or League of Legends whenever you want a PvP? Yeah, I think this is totally fair. Like, just because you don't PvP in an MMO doesn't mean you don't like PvP. It's just that you feel like MMOs have, like... The problem with PvP and MMOs is that they have, like, this fundamental paradox. The fundamental paradox is this. PvP and the sense of reward from PvP is built on the idea of having a fair fight and being able to overwhelm and defeat your opponent. But that sense of accomplishment is completely fucking ruined whenever you just have better gear than they do. So it's like, how do you have a fair fight in PvP whenever MMOs are completely built around building up your character? This is a paradox that MMOs have had to deal with PvP for years. Each game does it differently, but in general, life isn't fair. Yeah, that's why people are playing video games. So I think that's another, these just brain dead arguments like this. Life isn't fair. Yeah, no fucking shit. That's why they're on the video game. Yeah, they're both falling off hard. Yeah, exactly. And so this is really what I think. I think that a PvE server would probably pay for itself. If the PvP system is enough of a turnoff that a lot of people don't want to play the game, I think that balancing and designing a PvE server would probably pay for itself and then some, which would improve the entire game as a whole. And I think that the majority of people that think like, oh, well, we don't want that. I think a lot of the people that don't want a PvE server don't want it because they know that all of the people that they're trying to prey on to kill just won't play the game. So they have this idea in their mind that, oh, well, if we make them play on the server, we'll be able to kill them. No, you're fucking not, you idiot. They're just going to quit the game. Yeah, they can't grief. Yeah, it's their word that the server's going to fucking die. It's so crazy. Just say why you hate PvP. You're a streamer. I think being a streamer makes it more annoying, but it can also make it more interesting, etc. I'm not really planning on streaming Ashes of Creation as my only game. So if it was annoying for me, it wouldn't really be a big deal because I would just play something else. It's the same thing like in WoW or something else. The only reason it was annoying in Classic WoW is because I was pretty much only streaming that one game. That's why it was annoying. Who's bronze level? No, I'm not a great PvPer, but I can guarantee you that I'm probably better than average. Sleep out with the community is not a bad thing. PvP can be good for streamers community. Yeah, it's just that the problem is that with like Classic WoW, for example, PvP became the only content because people are able to influence the game in that way. Do you see what I'm saying? If you hate PvP, get good and stop crying. Well, I do. I get good in games that are good for PvP, where other good players play. I don't go and I play MMO PvP that most of the people that are competitive in these games are competitive in these games because they couldn't handle it in a real PvP game. These are people that are bronze ranked in any sort of a competitive PvP game that has an actual esports scene. So they're going and they're playing this fucking bullshit where they can have better gear than everybody else and kill them. Like, yeah, I'd rather be bronze ranked or silver in Overwatch than a fucking, like, a PvP god in one of these, like, open world PvP games. It's just not impressive to me. I'm sorry to say. To be honest, crap argument for WoW Arena? No, it's not. Because WoW Arena, see, if you knew anything about the game, you'd know this. Every single person above 2.1k rating has the same gear. PvP in WoW is effectively equalized because everybody has the exact same gear at the high levels. Sometimes people use a different trinket, but for the most part, everything is the same. So the reason why WoW Arena is good is ironically because people effectively have created stat templates. Listen, I can go through and argue and explain this, etc. I think that really, again, it comes down to what Lazy Peon said. We need to see the game and see what it's like. I would not write off doing a PvE server. I think that it's something that would probably pay for itself if the PvP system was something that caused a lot of people to not play the game. It's just something that's logical, and if you look at it from a business perspective, that's what would make sense to me.
The way Ashes of Creation is designed, having a PvE server would almost feel like a tourist mode, because
Exactly.
so much of the emotion and challenge in the game's experience will come from friction between players.
I just have to say, like, a lot of people don't play video games for getting emotional about them. And you know, this, like, big challenge. A lot of people play video games to relax. You don't need to play a video game for emotion and challenge. A lot of people have that in their real life. They come home, they want to play a video game, they want to chill out.
Additionally, whenever a game takes such a massive deviation from their core vision and removes something that previously touches every system in the game, it typically doesn't go so well. So,
Remove something that previously touches every system in the game. Let's see. I mean, that would be the opposite. The opposite of that was true with like, let's say, I don't know. You could. It's not really a very good example. With like Arc Nemesis mods and PoE, right? That affected everything in the game and it made it worse. I think also, like, there's a number of other examples in like WoW with like artifact power, for example. They took that completely out of the game after BFA. There's no artifact power in Shadowlands. It's gone. And this was like a core tenet for the game for 5 years. And they just deleted it, and the game was better. So I don't necessarily think this is true. I think that sometimes there are systems that are bad, and if you just delete them, the game's better. It's like Azoth is a system in New World. This is another example. The entire game and the entire system of the game was built around Azoth and traveling mattering. And then, ironically, whenever New World got rid of that, the game grew. That was a big complaint that a lot of people have. So I don't think that that's what it is. Is out this trash. Yes, exactly. Weapon skills in WoW. Yeah, weapon skills were fundamental for the entire game, and then Blizzard got rid of them and the game was better because of it. Terrible example with WoW. Most of WoW didn't have artifact power. I mean, you could say using mounts in WoW is definitely another example as well. You used to be able to use mounts at 40. Now you can use them at pretty much any level with the heirloom mounts. There's a lot of other examples too, right? That was just like one on a list. You're not comparing equal things. I feel like these are relatively good comparisons. You are never going to have a one-to-one comparison. But I feel like these are relative. All I'm saying is that just because a system is integral to a game doesn't mean that if you take the system out of the game won't function. You want a really good fucking example? Building in Fortnite.
Said, let's see how the current system works first. It's not as if there's no successful open PvP games. Lineage 2 was massive during its time. Arcade was huge at release but died due to reasons unrelated to its PvP system. And Black Desert Online has done pretty well over the years with a ton of pure PvE life skiller players enjoying it despite its highly flawed flagging system. If
I've heard about that. I don't know everything about it though.
PvP flagging system that actually works well, I think Intrepid are the ones to do it. Who knows, if they actually do a good job, we might see more people start to see the value in the risk versus reward aspects that PvP can bring to an MMO. I can totally understand why people are so against PvP though, because in the past, let's be honest, other games have done a
people just want to play the game and not get fucked with. That's literally it. Yeah, they just don't want to deal with it.
really bad job with it.
Oh my god. Oh my god. This guy's a clown. This guy is such a shill. And nobody should be supporting this guy, ever.
And to the people shitting on Lucky Ghost for having a Raid Shadow...
I'm not sure why people are unhappy about Lucky Ghost having a Raid Shadow Legends sponsor whenever allowing ads on your videos on YouTube puts cookies on your browser. Like, how is having a skippable Raid Shadow Legends sponsor worse than enabling YouTube monetization that puts cookies on your browser and farms out your browser history? It just doesn't make sense to me. Because they're jealous? Well, they've created an arbitrary line in the sand that doesn't make sense.
Legends ad in his video. I think that's kind of pathetic, honestly.
Delusional?
If you was in his position...
No, to be honest... It's not that they're delusional. They probably never even thought of it.
Be supporting this guy, ever.
And to the people shitting on Lucky Ghost for having a Raid Shadow Legends ad in his video, I think that's kind of pathetic, honestly. If you was in his position and you knew the numbers behind YouTube, you would also take that ad. If you're putting an opinion out there on the internet for thousands of nerds to argue over...
I think that there are people that don't take ads a lot of times. But I feel like the main people that like talking shit about other people taking ads are people that aren't in a position to take them themselves, or the opportunities that they have are very limited, or they don't pay a lot because they're irrelevant. That's really what it is.
You're fucking stupid if you're not getting paid well for it. The amount of abuse that content creators deal with for simply having a different opinion can heavily affect mental health. Most people skip these ads anyway. Anyone with a brain knows it's just reading from a script to get paid, and putting these small, easy to skip ads in videos often results in you getting paid 5 times the amount you'd get from regular YouTube AdSense.
Oh, I would say it's probably more than that from my experience, but I think that's even a bad argument, right? I mean, obviously there are people that don't have the ads, etc. I think that most of the people that complain about other content creators that post ads, again, they're not in a position to do it themselves. Or they work at some company that they effectively have to sell out for every single fucking day. So I think, again, this is just a... It's just a shit-talking moron opinion that if you even slightly evaluate it, it immediately falls apart.
Remember that life is also an MMORPG and you need money to play it. But that's it for this.
And this is also coming from me, by the way, who, yes, I've taken a sponsor from New World, right? But for the most part, I have no ads on this channel. I don't make any ad revenue. And I'll just tell you guys, I could make over 100K a month if I did that on this channel. And I don't do it because I just don't feel like it. It's the same as I took donations off my channel, on my main channel. A lot of you guys might not have noticed that because I didn't have to like make a big announcement to like talk about how much I care about, you know, my viewers because they're too stupid to donate. They're too stupid not to donate to me. But yeah, I just deleted it because it was annoying. I felt bad whenever I would get a donation that I wouldn't read it, and I just didn't want to deal with it. Right? I didn't need the donations, so I got rid of them. Like, I've never talked shit about people that take donations. I've never talked shit about people who take ads. And I've never talked shit about people who go and they look for sponsors. So, again, it's always these people that are fucking losers that have no opportunity to do this, or the opportunities that they have pay out so little that it's not worth the minimal, tiny amount of integrity they think they have, that they can't afford to lose, or at least lose the perception of having, that they don't do it. That's what it is. And I think that 99% of it are just viewers that are mad that are in that position. When does Asmon shit talk? Talk shit then? I don't really talk shit about a lot of people in general. Right? I very rarely do that unless they're talking shit about somebody else, or I talk shit about what they're saying.
Of creation update video. We've covered lots of stuff in this one, together with a bit of spicy drama at the end for good measure. If you enjoyed the content, then destroy the like button for the YouTube algorithm gods, and go nuts in the comments with some healthy, constructive discourse, which the MMO community is famously known for.
Yeah.
Social media on screen. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
I think it was a pretty fair video. For sure. Yeah, I like that video a lot. Definitely. John, I agree with him. Yeah, I'm glad, and I hope that this is going to be. I hope it's going to be done well. And again, I think really, all of this conversation and everything kind of falls by the wayside because we really just need to see what the game is like and then make a decision on it. But I do think that people will categorically decide not to play a game that has mandatory PvP. I do think so without even looking into it. Like, it's unfortunate, but I feel like that's probably true. It's the same as like people are going to wrong. Wait, so you think that people will not... You think that there will not be people that choose not to play a game because it has mandatory PvP? You think there aren't people like that? Wait, true? Yeah, okay, that's... Alright, yeah, there we go. That's what I thought. Alright, yeah, Lazy Peon's made a lot of videos like this before, and, you know, I like them a lot. I'll go ahead and I'll link them to you guys again. Yeah, absolutely, there are. I think that's okay. Yeah, exactly. And what do you think about PvP Oceans? I mean, I think it's an interesting idea. But again, I have to actually see what the game is like. That's it. That's what it is. I wouldn't play an MMO with mandatory PvP. It would be awfully stressful. Yeah, people just don't want to deal with that shit. I think that makes sense, right? You can play a single-player game if you don't like PvP. So why is it okay for you to say that, but if somebody says... you can play a PvP game if you do like PvP, and somehow this is not also true? Like, just go play Counter-Strike if you want PvP. It's such a stupid thing to say. Or I play cooperative games without PvP. Yeah, it's just a small brain PvP Andes, I guess. I don't know what to say. Again, you know, you see how dumb some of these arguments are, and you can understand why they want to have people that don't want to actually be able to PvP against them. They can't win in a fair fight. They're trash. Just so stupid. It's so annoying. Yeah, I know. Let's see here. I decided to play this game in 2030. Yeah, exactly. It's noticeable when an MMORPG content creator is informed. Yeah, I'm glad to see that. I think that... I feel like most people are generally informed about the topics that they talk about. It's just that some people interpret them differently.